put your faith, get elusive, don't lose hope. The mountain's worth moving. No one said it'd be easy, but I feel so out of options. Give me the strength I've been needing. All the answers in the empty space. What is faith if just a face? Keep me out the commonplace. All the times I was told it's nothing, I saw the hand of God do something. Oh, oh, you know where to find me, where the rest don't see what I see. Oh, oh, you know where to find me, in the depths of all the mystery. Oh, oh, you know where to find me, where the rest don't see what I see. Oh, oh, you know where to find me, in the depths of all the mystery.
Light breakthrough, you know I'm really needing it. To tell the truth, I wish it was immediate. Show me how to hold on, slow down. Don't gotta get what I want right now, 'cause you'll come through again, 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 again. Oh, but even if you take your time, even if you say I gotta wait in line, go ahead and do what you gotta do. God, I'm giving you control. Oh, 'cause even if it's hard to see, I believe you're doing something good in me. Go ahead, 'cause you're doing it with love, and you're not gonna rush my life. It's alright, go on and take your time. All I want is whatever you want from me. And you're not done, you'll get me where I need to be. Show me how to hold on, slow down. Don't gotta get what I want right now, 'cause you'll come through again, 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 again. Whoa. But even if you take your time, even if you say I gotta wait in line, go ahead and do what you gotta do. God, I'm giving you control. Oh, 'cause even if it's hard to see, I believe you're doing something good in me. Go ahead, 'cause you're doing it with love, and you're not gonna rush my life. It's alright, go on and take your time. Take your time, take your time. Go on, go on, go on, and take your time. Take your time, take your time. Go on, go on, go on. Show me how to hold on, slow down. Don't gotta get what I want right now, 'cause you'll come through again, 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 and again. Oh, but even if you take your time, even if you say I gotta wait in line, go ahead and do what you gotta do. God, I'm giving you control, I'm giving you control. 'Cause even if it's hard to see, I believe you're doing something good in me. Go ahead, 'cause you're doing it with love, and you're not gonna rush my life. It's alright, go on and take your time. Take your time. Go on, go on, go on. Take your time. Take your time. Go on, go on, go on. Take your time.
When things stay the same, I grow impatient. It's in time, it's in the making. If you're like me, you start to question all the answers in the empty space. What is faith if just a face? Keep me out the commonplace. All the times I was told it's nothing, I saw the hand of God do something. Oh, oh, you know where to find me, in the depths of all the mystery. Oh, oh, you know where to find me, where the rest don't see what I see. Oh, oh, you know where to find me, in the depths of all the mystery. And I know things get harder as time keeps running. Don't let your faith get elusive, don't lose hope, a mountain's worth moving. No one said it'd be easy, but I feel so out of options. Give me the strength I've been needing. All the answers in the empty space. What is faith if just a face? Keep me at the commonplace. All the times I was told it's nothing, I saw the hand of God do something. Oh, oh, you know where to find me, where the rest don't see what I see. Oh, oh, you know where to find me, in the depths of all the mystery. Oh, oh, you know where to find me, where the rest don't see what I see. Oh, oh, you know where to find me, in the depths of all the mystery.
Did I pledge my allegiance for the purpose of progress, to a priest or a prophet, playing God in the process? Was I chasing convenience in a wave of disaster, where the captain's a captain and all the puppets a pastor? Never this mission. I'm willing to hope beyond suspicion. Show me the race, I'll run the distance. Longing to give and taste forgiveness. Dying to live a pure religion. Settle the rush to chase ambition. Open my eyes and soul to listen. Listen.
What is going on?
Abuela, it's okay. We're gonna save the miracle. The magic.
What are you talking about? Look at our home. Look at your sister.
Please, just...
Bruno left because of you. Luisa's losing her powers. Isabella's out of control because of you. I don't know why you weren't given a gift, but it is not an excuse for you to hurt this family.
I will never be good enough for you. No matter how hard any of us tries, Luisa will never be strong enough. Isabella won't be perfect enough. Bruno left our family because you only saw the worst in him.
Bruno didn't care about this family.
He loves this family. I love this family. We all love this family. You're the one that doesn't care. You're the one breaking our home.
Don't you
The
ever...
miracle is dying because of you. Abuela, I can finally see. You lost your home. Lost everything. You suffered so much all alone. So it would never happen again. We were saved because of you.
I asked my Pedro for help. Mirabel. He sent me you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Sunday service. Thank you for joining us on this chilly morning. In the Encanto clip that we just saw, there's this family that's broken by them having unforgiveness and them blaming each other for things that are hard in their family. And by the end of the clip, it's really, there's this amazing story of forgiveness and this amazing story of them able to see each other and their shared, their stories and their shared humanity and their shared life together. And so they come together. And we, as people who have our own brokenness, can look at something like that and see and put ourselves there and put ourselves in that kind of story. So we're going to dive further into that, and Ryan's going to talk about that this morning. But before we do that, we have some announcements to go through. So we're going to run through all of these announcements because all of these are on Church Center, which you can see there's a QR code on the screen. So feel free to scan that if you have any questions, if there's any information that you need, it's all right there. So our first announcement is food banks next Friday or Saturday, and next Friday and Saturday. And because it's Catalyst weekend, we could potentially use some more help there. So if you're not planning it being at Catalyst, please consider helping out at Food Bank and serving our community. The next announcement is that Catalyst is, in fact, almost here, and today is the last day to register. So if you're interested in joining, please also scan the QR code on the screen and feel free to register. We'd love to have you there. And then we also wanted to emphasize small groups that start the week after Catalyst. And this season, we're focusing on the Bible Project series from Adam to Noah. And I've personally gone through this series, and it's awesome. Like, it is so good. Like, a lot of times Genesis is the first book of the Bible that we read because it's first chronologically. And so when we have our New Year's plans, we might read it and then we might struggle to keep up with it. So it's the one we go to the most. But it is not just, it takes way more than a cursory look at it. Like, there are so many layers to it. It is so deep. It is awesome, God. And once you really understand some of the depth to Genesis, it really helps that story that God is telling come together. It really, really helps our comprehension and understanding of God's greater story. So please sign up for small groups and engage with us on that. And our last announcement is offering, where we take the time to remember all that God's done for us, and we give back the gifts that he's given to us. Everything that we have comes from him. He rules this earth. He rules over all the resources. He rules over our finances. And so this is just our opportunity to say, God, I give it back to you. So that's all that we have for announcements. If you have any more questions about that, once again, Church Center is there under the announcements tab. You can find any of the information for that, or you can talk to any staff member about any information. So let's pray and welcome God into our service. Heavenly Father, we worship you. We thank you that you are so amazing, that you've brought us all together, that you've created this beautiful, beautiful land that we live in. Help us to have open hearts, to put ourselves in the places of others, to help us to see how we do not always center others. We center ourselves a lot of the time, and so we need you. We need you to help us to love others, to go beyond ourselves. And so I pray that as we come this morning, that you'd help us to have humble hearts, to hear what Ryan has to say, so that way we can work on our unforgiveness in our lives. We love you so much. In your holy name, amen.
Thanks, Jacob. It was New Year's Eve in 1995. And everyone was off at some party, ringing in the new year, except for you. No one had invited you, and you wouldn't have gone anyway. No one wanted you there. So instead, you were walking the dark streets looking for the perfect house, the perfect dark, empty, but still worth robbing house. And then you found it. No car in the garage or driveway, no light on, and you went in to change your life. Now, Frances had gone to bed early on New Year's Eve. She was 76 after all. The years of staying up until midnight were long gone. Her 3 children were grown, and her grandchildren were the joy of her life. You need your rest if you are going to run around with kids on New Year's Day, she thought to herself before turning in. Thankfully, she fell asleep easily, looking forward to her son picking her up in the morning, as she had stopped driving years ago. Frances had been asleep for a few hours when she woke up to a noise and slowly got out of bed to investigate. It was probably nothing, but just outside of her bedroom, she startled a man as he was taking items from one of her shelves. She looked at him, at her memories in one of his hands, and a crowbar in his other hand, and he bludgeoned her to death. After killing Frances, he ran through the house and broke every mirror, shattering the glass the way he shattered her family's lives. Now, this is not just a story. This really happened in Knoxville, Tennessee, 30 years ago. Now, if you'd read the newspaper the next day and you'd seen the report of this crime, how would you have felt? What would have gone through your mind? I know for me, I probably would have paused for a moment and maybe been slightly sad, maybe said a prayer, but I'd move on with my day, which is normal when the tragedy is distant from you, when it's impersonal. But how would you have felt if Frances had been your neighbor on that street? or if she'd been a member of your church because she was a church-going woman. How would you have felt if Frances was your sister, your aunt, or your mother or grandmother that New Year's Day? And this is when a story becomes more than a story. It becomes a devastating reality. And the question that we're trying to grapple with in this new series is, how do we forgive, really forgive something as terrible as this? Do you think that you could forgive someone who murdered your sister or aunt or mother? Or is that simply unforgivable? We live in a hurting world, and we are hurting people. Hurting is natural. Forgiveness is supernatural. Jesus invites us, implores us, calls us to become forgiving people. But how do we actually do it? How can we experience this supernatural gift and actually forgive, especially the hardest things in life? In this series, Reaching for Forgiveness, over the next 5 weeks, we're going to work through a 5-step process to forgive, developed by the foremost researcher on forgiveness, Dr. Everett Worthington, a clinical psychologist and professor at Virginia Commonwealth University, who also happens to be a follower of Jesus. We want to help you practically learn how to forgive, because this is at the heart of following Jesus. You are forgiven, and forgiven people forgive people. But it's not natural, and we need to learn and practice, and let the Holy Spirit give us the supernatural ability to forgive as we've been forgiven. We'll use Everett Worthington's research, the words of Jesus, and the story of Joseph as our guide today and throughout the whole series. Because all of us struggle to forgive. It can easily find ourselves in the descent into unforgiveness that Megan unpacked in our last series. If you haven't listened to it, if you weren't here, I encourage you to go back on the Damascus Road podcast and check it out. It's called I'm the Problem, It's Me, on November 10th from our Bad Blood series, which you can find on our website or on your podcast platform of choice. But here's the quick summary of the descent into unforgiveness that we're trying to reverse. It starts with a transgression. There's some sort of hurt, which is normal. But then we get to perception. I tell a story about that pain, about what was done to me, and about the person who did it. Then there's the sensation. I feel betrayed, angry, afraid, offended, unloved. And then we reach rumination. I rehearse the hurt. I keep telling myself that story, and it expands and becomes worse and worse. And I'm the victim, and they're the villain. And that's the whole of them. And then it distills in us, and we grow bitter. This is the descent into unforgiveness, and we lose relationships, we lose parts of ourselves, and we're bitter and angry because of that thing or that person that has happened to us. Now, there are 2 types of forgiveness, if we want to reverse this direction, that we can experience. The first is called decisional forgiveness. Now, decisional forgiveness is a complete decision to forgive. It's when you decide not to pay back the hurt with another hurt, but you plan to treat the other person as someone that you appreciate, as someone made in God's image. And decisional forgiveness is something we can choose as an act of our will. In fact, I think probably many of us have done this in our life. Maybe in the last series, I think last time I spoke about this, one of the options I said is, like, today I will decide that I will be someone who forgives. So maybe you've tried that. You've said, I will do this. I want to follow the way of Jesus in this way. I want to be a forgiver, which is a really important step. But the challenge that we have, especially with the hardest things, especially when we've gone through the descent into unforgiveness, isn't primarily decisional forgiveness. It's emotional forgiveness. Emotional forgiveness is replacing negative, unforgiving emotions with more positive emotions towards the wrongdoer. Because we can decide to forgive, but the emotional change is often where we struggle, and that can take years to actually experience. Even if you wanted to forgive Francis's murderer, if you were a family member, how do you actually feel like you've forgiven internally and not still be wrapped in bitterness and anger over that event? The Reach Forgiveness model is designed to help you experience emotional forgiveness as well as decisional forgiveness. And as I said, this was developed by Dr. Everett Worthington. So the process can be remembered with a really easy acronym that we just said, REACH. That's why our series is called Reaching Forgiveness. And we're going to walk through it, and then we're going to unpack the first step. So the first is you recall the hurt, you remember. And this is what we're going to unpack today. How can we remember the hurt accurately? How can we recall it differently, not with speculation or mind reading, not with vitriol and pain that we so easily choose in the descent into unforgiveness, not with the story we tell ourselves that magnifies. How can we actually recount the event honestly and objectively so that we can move to step 2, which is empathize. Instead of telling ourselves a story about how terrible they are and how much they hurt you, we instead choose empathy, not to justify or excuse, but simply to recognize that they are human, and I might be able to imagine what they were thinking about and begin to see it from their perspective in a small way. We use our imaginations and we tell a kinder story. We've hurt other people. What was happening in us when we did that? And then we begin to consider what might have been happening in them when they hurt you. Third, you give the altruistic gift of forgiveness. Because forgiveness is a gift. It's no coincidence that the word give is in it. I've been forgiven by God and by others. Just as I've been forgiven, I can forgive. But this is miraculous. It's not only that God forgives, people forgive as well, right? If they can do it, maybe I can do it. If I've been forgiven by others, maybe I can forgive. So we choose to give a gift that is undeserved because something really wrong was done. And we forgive. But that's not the end. The fourth step is that you commit to the forgiveness that you experienced. Now, this can be as simple as writing yourself a note. I forgave on such and such a day, at such and such a time, this person, this hurt. I've committed myself to forgiving this hurt. And then finally, you hold on to the forgiveness when you doubt. Especially with the deepest hurts, forgiveness is more than a one-time decision and more than just a simple commitment. It's a process that we continue to choose in the face of pain. I will probably doubt. I could be hurt again. I could move into confirmation bias, right? Where everything this person does feeds my negative narrative, my negative emotions about them. If I'm hurt again, I can remind myself that I'm someone who's chosen forgiveness. And that what I'm feeling is the same conditioned response that I feel when I scraped a knee or when I burned my hand on the stove and I get near the location of that hurt again. Trying to forgive is like medication you might take for a disease that causes a fever. The first dose might bring down the fever, but the fever might return. You might have to take several doses before the disease is gone. Now we have the REACH workbook available for you printed. You can also download the digital version from the link in the Bible app. So if you're following along in Church Center, or click on the message and slides, it'll take you to the Bible app, and you can go directly to the digital place and download it for yourself. There are physical copies up here. And if we run out of physical copies, if you mark that you'd like a physical copy on your digital communication card today, we'll bring you one next week. Because it's a process that you can actually go through. It's got 12 different lessons. It's designed to be done in under 2 hours. But to actually tangibly work through something that you're struggling to forgive and begin to find some emotional release, even in 2 hours. So this morning we're going to start with R, recall the hurt. One of the biggest problems here is that human memory is notoriously unreliable. There's a lot of research here that you can read, and most people think that our memories kind of work like a video camera. It's accurate and factual and free from bias, which could not be further from the truth. For instance, have you ever disagreed with someone about what actually happened in a class or a meeting that you were both present at? I know I have. In fact, I recently had a conversation with someone where we had almost diametrically opposed memories of what occurred at a meeting. We had totally different memories, and we had to simply agree to disagree, as there was no recording. Though I did consult someone later who was at the meeting, who agreed with me. Victory. I've been vindicated. My memory is far superior and totally free from errors. I don't know how yours is, but though I imagine that the person I disagreed with may have found another person that was at the meeting and spoken to them, and they may have agreed with them. I don't know. Now, I had a front row seat to to one of these memory disagreements over Christmas when we were with Megan's family. My lovely wife and her mother were sitting at the table discussing pets. My wife's family has had a lot of beloved pets, and apparently they dabbled in some non-traditional pets, and I just mean non-traditional, not like cats and dogs. This Christmas, they were particularly reminiscing about the infamous disputed rodent named Gracie. Megan was convinced that this pet was a gerbil, while my mother-in-law was adamant that it was a hamster. And they went on for like 10 minutes saying gerbil, hamster, hamster. And I thought someone was going to let it go, and they didn't. They just kept going. Like, no, I'm telling you. And I was like, why is this even happening? Why does this matter? Who cares? I don't know the difference between a hamster and a gerbil. One has a tail, maybe? This is the most ludicrous argument I've ever been around. Can't someone just whip out a picture of little Gracie and settle it once and for all? Oh, that's right. There weren't like camera phones back in the early 90s. I mean, if they were, Megan's family certainly didn't have them. So we just have these two apparently at odds memories of whether it was a hamster or a gerbil. Now, there are a few reasons that our legal system requires multiple eyewitness accounts and considers video evidence even better. But one of the primary ones is that human memory is fallible. Most scholars who do research in this area say that our memory is a lot more like an old man sitting around a campfire telling stories. Or maybe like an older woman with her daughter in a cabin over Christmas. Something like that. It just may or may not be accurate. Our memories tend to be unreliable because we expect whole, complete, understandable stories. So we often fill in the blanks. And this is what we mean when we say we tell ourselves a story. The story we choose to tell is critical to forgiving and having long-term relationships. The story we tell ourselves can fuel our anger and unforgiveness, or it can move us towards forgiveness, and we get to choose what story we tell. Not only do we make sense of life through story, we have a self-serving bias, right? We are often the heroes or the victims of the story. We give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, but see others through the pain that they've caused us, instead of as a person who has good days and bad days, just like we do. Now, there's a story in the Bible that's good, instructive here. Joseph's story in Genesis is instructive on this journey to forgiveness. It can help us understand this recall event a little bit better. It's the climax of the book of Genesis, which is full of family dysfunction and hurt. Now, families are often the source of a lot of pain, and forgiveness is vital for a family to be more than just an acknowledgement of shared blood. Joseph starts out in the story extremely immature and experiences great tragedy, but is still able to become and grow into a healthy, spiritually mature person who can forgive the pain that he's experienced, just like we want to. So we're going to start at the beginning, and throughout this whole series, we'll get to the end. So we're not going real far today. We're going to start in chapter 37 of Genesis, when Joseph is 17 years old. Do you remember being 17? Just keep that in your head. Joseph does some dumb 17-year-old things. This is the account of Jacob and his family. When Joseph was 17 years old, he often tended his father's flocks. He worked for his half-brothers, the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. So we learned some important things right off the bat, right? Joseph's family is not free from drama. In fact, he's part of a blended family. His father Jacob had 2 wives and then 2 concubines as well as children from all 4 of those women. So talk about conflict and complication. And Joseph is the youngest son, and he's working with his half-brothers. But he did more than work for them. He reported on them to his father. Now, I know that it's hard to be the youngest, but being a tattletale on your older brothers isn't going to make life much easier. The text tells us who the mothers of his brothers were, and this is important to pay attention to. The Bible rarely includes irrelevant details. So if you remember, we're going to try and dredge up our memory of Joseph's story. If you don't know it, it's crazy. Check it out. His father Jacob was deceived by his father-in-law, Jethro, into marrying his older daughter, Leah, as well as the younger daughter, Rachel, that he actually loved. He thought he had agreement to marry Rachel. Jethro pulled a switch, which I'm not sure how that happened, but it was the beginning of great pain and competition between these 2 wives. There's a reason that there's no positive depiction of polygamy in the Bible. It does not lead to flourishing. And this competition extends to two of their servants, Bilhah and Zilpah. Joseph is the only son of the beloved wife, Rachel. And he's tattling on his older brothers that were the sons of the servants, the lowest status brothers, the most vulnerable. And he doesn't talk to his brothers directly about it, that we are told. Instead, he goes to his father and he throws them under the bus, or maybe under the camel caravan in the ancient Near East. Let's keep reading. Thanks for chuckling at that just a little bit. That's sweet of you. I appreciate it. I'm trying. Brad's real skeptical, but we can just keep going. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind word to him. Now, just a little hint for future parents. Playing favorites with your children is not a great move. But this isn't new for Joseph's family. Favoritism is a theme that runs all through Genesis in the Bible, and it does incredible damage. His father Jacob and was his grandmother Rebekah's favorite, and his dad's brother Esau, or his brother Esau was Isaac's favorite, right? Which led to all sorts of grief. And here Jacob is repeating the mistake of his family in showing favoritism to Joseph. Joseph's the youngest, right? He's the only son of the wife that Jacob loves the most. And then Jacob makes it worse by giving him the coat of many colors, right? The Technicolor dream coat, if we want to go musical on it. And it's the beautiful robe that this translation calls it. Now, the only other time that this term for this type of robe is used in the Bible is used to refer to royalty. So this is not just favoritism, but it probably indicates that Joseph is the probable heir and future patriarch, passing over all of his older brothers. When the brothers saw that Joseph was loved more than them, they hated him. Now, if we pause and think, who had they actually been hurt by? They'd been hurt by their father. But they feel hatred for their brother, because they can't express hostility toward Jacob without facing greater rejection and alienation. So they target Joseph, and Joseph was an easy target. Not just younger, but uniquely unaware or callous to how his actions impacted his brothers. He was the golden child, the cherished one, the beloved boy, and they were not. So it was easy for them to tell themselves a terrible story about Joseph. And they descend into unforgiveness. And the reality is what goes on in our hearts, the stories we're telling ourselves, the emotions that we're feeling, it comes out of our mouths. It always does, Jesus says. From the overflow of the mouth, or from the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And they cannot speak a kind word. There's a whole other story happening. And Joseph either doesn't know or doesn't care, because Joseph's actions only make it worse, and his brothers hated him more and more until they had to act. Joseph makes it hard. One night, Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. Listen to this dream, he said. We were out in the field tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine. His brothers responded, so you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us? And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. Joseph had a dream, and he couldn't help but share it. He's the younger brother. The dream led to more hate and vitriol. Now, there's no indication here that Joseph understands that power is to be used to serve. He'll get better here, but he doesn't get it yet. Remember how we talked about power, the theology of power in our series in the fall? Jesus explains that the use of power in his community for his followers, after two brothers, James and John, had expressed their desire to hold the highest positions of leadership among the 12 disciples, Jesus said it this way. You know that the rulers of this world lord it over their people, and officials flaunt their authority over those under him. But among you it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. Whoever wants to be first among you must become your slave. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Joseph has a lot to learn. He's got a long way to go. and he is certainly part of the problem. He is arrogant and naive and totally unaware of how the brothers feel about him and how sharing his dreams are only going to make it worse. Now, if Joseph could enter into the world of others, if he could see things from his brother's perspective, he might understand how they view him and how he's contributing to the problem. Maybe if Joseph didn't need affirmation and attention, maybe he wouldn't have shared his dreams in the first place. But Joseph is young and foolish, and he has another dream. And this time he tells his father too, not just his brothers. Soon Joseph had another dream, and again he told his brothers about it. Listen, I've had another dream, he said. The sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed low before me. This time he told the dream to his father as well as to his brothers, but his father scolded him. What kind of dream is that, he asked. Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow to the ground before you? But while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered what the dreams meant. So finally we see Jacob stepping in and fathering in some way here. He rebukes Joseph because this time he's included in the group that's bowing down. Perhaps it wasn't serious enough before. And the reality is that Jacob isn't helping the problem, right? He's the one who initially hurt the brothers by having a favorite. And the rejection of a father or recognizing that you are not loved in the same way as a sibling can be deeply painful. But Jacob is not a safe target for the pain of those brothers. So the brothers are jealous of Joseph, and they live with it every day. And resentment and hatred grew, and they tell themselves a story. And now, not just the favoritism of their father, but the way Joseph rubs their face in it becomes a part of that story. And then Jacob makes a critical error, which leads to years and years of pain and estrangement. Soon after this, Joseph's brothers went to pasture their father's flocks at Shechem. When they had been gone for some time, Jacob said to Joseph, your brothers are pasturing the sheep at Shechem. Get ready, and I will send you to them. So Jacob sends Joseph to check in on his brothers at Shechem, right? The favorite son, known for being a tattletale, is sent to check on his brothers again. This probably isn't going to go well. Again, notice the relevant detail. His brothers are in Shechem. This isn't just interesting. This isn't just geography. There's a reason the Bible tells us this. Jacob and his family do not have a good reputation in Shechem. Again, this is the craziness of Genesis. Because earlier in Genesis, Jacob's daughter Dinah was violated in Shechem. And two of her brothers, Simeon and Levi, fool the men of Shechem and kill them while they are recovering from the circumcision that Simeon and Levi had required them to do to join the family. So instead of joining the family, they were circumcised and murdered. So this is where the brothers are. They're back in Shechem. This is a recipe for disaster. Jacob is so clueless as a father that even though his sons hate Joseph, he sent him into great harm. And we read that Joseph wears the coat of many colors, continuing to rub the favoritism in his brothers' faces. When Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance, probably because of the coat, right? And as he approached, they made plans to kill him. Here comes the dreamer, they said. Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of those cisterns. We can tell our father a wild animal has eaten him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams. So when they finally see Joseph coming, they say, here comes the dreamer. They've othered him. They don't use his name. They don't claim kinship. They've dehumanized Joseph, and he is in trouble. Now, there's a whole other story, right, that's occurring below the surface that Joseph misses entirely. And it's the story that the brothers have been telling themselves. And while they are older and may have had more time to mature than Joseph, their actions are repulsive. Because let's be honest, like, it's pretty easy to say, like, they're the younger sibling. This isn't shocking. They need to grow up a little bit. But like, it doesn't have to be bad, right? I have a younger brother. You don't wake up one day, not this one. We had a much younger brother. He was a younger brother, you know, what do you expect? And the reality is, maybe you do, I don't. You don't wake up one day and consider killing a brother. Like, that's not like a normal thing out of nowhere, like, murder is what I'm thinking about today. What happens is it's this descent into unforgiveness, where anger and bitterness and pain have taken root, where the story gets rehearsed and you ruminate on it over and over again, so that all of a sudden this seems like a good idea. It seems like it might make you happy, or at the very least, it will remove the pain. Their hatred of Joseph and their bitterness over their father's favoritism grows to the point that they consider killing Joseph. Now, thankfully, we wouldn't have much of a story if they actually did that. Instead, they fake his death at the hands of animals and instead sell him into slavery. They lie to their father about Joseph's fate and hope that they will never see their brother again. They take revenge on their youngest brother, who is immature and arrogant, but ultimately just young and probably looked up to many of them. And they sell him into slavery and lie to their father about his favorite son's fate and assume that this is the end, right? And if you notice, in this passage, we get vivid descriptions of what the brothers think and feel and what Jacob thinks and feels and what he's blind to, but we don't have any clue what Joseph thinks. All we have are his words and his actions. He does not notice or does not care what is happening with his brothers, how they think and feel about him, and how his actions are contributing to the problem. Now imagine Joseph's situation for a moment. He lost his family, his home, his culture, his language, his freedom, and his future all in one day. And it's horrible. And it doesn't get much better initially. In Egypt, after gaining the trust of his master Potiphar, he's falsely accused of rape by his master's wife and then thrown into prison, where he remained for years. Which seems like a recipe for bitterness and brokenness, right? This seems like the descent into unforgiveness is just calcifying. Joseph had lost everything and is unjustly imprisoned. But for Joseph, this was actually the place where God forged his character and grew him into the man he was going to become. And all of us know people who've experienced terrible things in life. Some of us have experienced terrible things. Life can be full of struggle, challenge, failure, and sadness. But some of the time, the people who go through challenges are broken by them. And some of the time, they are forged in the fire into an incredible person of faith and love by God. Some of the most joyful people I've met have been some of the poorest by American standards. And some of the most depressed, bitter, angry people seem to have everything they need to have a good life. It's not what we have or the challenges we face, it's how we respond to them and to God's incredible grace. Will we descend into unforgiveness, or will we instead reach for forgiveness? If Joseph can come through his loss of everything and imprisonment transformed, then I think that there's hope for us too. And we'll dive into a story, we'll unpack the whole thing over the next 4 weeks because it's so striking and it's helpful because we want to go on that journey. We want to become forgivers like he became. Joseph did it, and you can too. So let's pause and just consider for a moment the moment of Joseph's betrayal. Imagine the thoughts he might have had when he was lying in that cistern, waiting to be taken away. Imagine the hurt and bitterness and anger and sorrow, the betrayal of older brothers. He's the youngest, and instead of protectors, he had perpetrators. Now imagine for a moment that this is the pain that needs to be forgiven. The first step in the process is to recall the hurt. When we recall the hurt, we don't deny that we've been hurt. There's no denying what's happened to Joseph, right? But we can go back and look at it, not dwelling on our victimhood, not rehearsing what a terrible person the one who hurt us is, as we are so prone to do. In unforgiveness, we often want to reduce the person to the hurt that they did to us. That becomes the whole of who they are. They're the villain, we're the victim. But that's what we're trying to avoid. Recalling isn't pretending that you weren't hurt, but it is trying to go back and understand, to look at it objectively, not to excuse or dismiss the hurt, but also not to ruminate on it or rehearse the hurt either. Now, it's good for our souls to believe that people are doing the best that they can, even if it isn't always true. at least on first blush. I struggle with this idea that, people are doing the best they can, because I know that I'm not always doing the best that I can, right? So it's really hard for me to think that everybody is, because I know I don't. But what I think that we could affirm graciously as we recall the hurt is that people do what makes sense to them in the moment. They do what they think will make them happy or what will relieve the pain, right? I think the brothers did what made sense to them in the moment, even if they weren't doing the best that they could, I don't think, right? People act in their best interest as best they know how, just as we often do. And just understanding that can help give us a little bit of grace for the person that hurt us. So start to forgive by recalling the hurt the way a reporter or maybe a historian would do it, objectively as a third party, and try to be able to describe the event, the pain that you have that you need to forgive in a way that everyone would agree with, not speculating or filling in the gaps on what someone else was thinking, not villainizing the other person or making yourself a victim. To recall, we try to remove the emotion and pain from it initially, so that we can move on to the next step, which is empathy, which we'll look at next week. This is what Joseph needed to do, and it's what we need to do. We start trying to be objective so that we can move into the ascent, so that we can reach for forgiveness instead of remaining in our anger and bitterness and the stories we tell ourselves. So for this week in our journey to forgiveness, here are a few things you can do. First, reflect back on your life and think of the hardest thing that you successfully forgave. What is a hurt, or who is a person that has hurt you that you actually forgave? Because if you can see that you have forgiven terrible things in the past, even if you're struggling with forgiving something recent or something particularly hurtful, you can have just a little bit of hope that forgiveness is possible with God's help in this instance as well. So think of the hardest thing you've successfully forgiven. The older you get, the easier this should be, hopefully. Or we're really becoming terrible people. It's one of the two, right? Secondly, think of one person and one hurt. We want this series to be practical and real. So the thing that we want you to think about is, who is the person that you struggle to forgive now? Not in the past, but now. That you struggle to see as a child of God. That you don't really want to run into around town or receive a text or email from. That when you see them or you hear from them, something in your chest tightens and your pulse quickens and you start to sweat. Because there's something there that's holding on to you. Is there a specific event or hurt that is tied to that person? Then think of that one hurt and try to recall it objectively, like we just talked about. Write it in a way that the person who hurt you might agree, yes, those are the facts of the situation. Don't excuse or condone or deny wrongdoing, but don't exaggerate it either. We're on a journey to forgiveness, which means something has actually been done that needs to be forgiven. It's not excused away, it was legitimately bad. But we have to write it out. We need to consider it without emphasizing how bad the wrongdoer is or how much we've been victimized, and expanding and telling a story that leads to bitterness. The fourth thing you could do is work through the first 4 lessons in the Reach Forgiveness Workbook. We have some copies up here. You can download it from the Bible app. And what it will tell you to do is use this one person, one hurt as the focus of your journey to forgiveness. And it will go into way more in depth. It has exercises that are self-guided that you can do, though it's obviously good to be able to talk through this with someone else. Each lesson is designed to take 10 minutes. Your mileage might vary here, but it's doable. It's supposed to be able to be worked through in less than 2 hours. And if you remember our last series, we're probably not as good at forgiveness as we think we are. There's probably a person or a hurt that we should work on a little bit. And we want to become forgivers. Finally, if you do nothing else, I encourage you to do this. Pray Jesus' words in the Lord's Prayer each day as a refrain as we work through this practical series on forgiveness. Forgive us our sins as we have forgiven those who sin against us. Forgive us our sins as we have forgiven those who sin against us. This is what Jesus encourages his followers to pray. It's part of a larger section, but in this instance, if we want to become forgivers, if we want to go on the ascent to forgiveness, we need to start somewhere. Because this is a journey that we can go on, and God can help us with. We can become forgivers, and it starts with recalling the hurt accurately, which we'll work on together shortly during our reflection time. So on New Year's Day, 1996, Everett Worthington's phone rang at 7 a.m. Who would be calling that early on New Year's? It was his brother Mike, and what Mike told him would shake Ev to the core. His mother, Frances, had been murdered during a home invasion the night before. Everett Worthington, the foremost researcher on forgiveness, had become an expert on the practice. He'd done research for 7 years on forgiveness, and he turned in the manuscript to a book on the topic to a publisher. And then he reached a crisis of forgiveness. Talking with his sister about what had happened, he was full of rage and anger. His mother had been bludgeoned to death with a crowbar in a senseless crime. The future that he'd imagined with her spending time with his children and grandchildren, the joy and the memories that he hoped would be there were erased in a moment. And as he talked to his sister, he noticed that there was a bat in the room, and he pointed to it and said, if he was here, I would take that bat and I would kill him right now. And that night, Ev walked back and forth in the bedroom he was staying in for 4 hours, unable to sleep, raging about the crime and the loss of his mother. At about 3 a.m., he finally stopped and said to himself, I need to do something more productive than walk back and forth. So he sat down to write a eulogy for his mother. And in doing that, it dawned on him, I'm a Christian and a forgiveness researcher, but I have not allowed myself to even think the word forgiveness in nearly 24 hours since I heard of her death. I really ought to think through this reach forgiveness model that we developed and at least consider the beginning of forgiveness. And as he worked through the model, he told a generous story about the thief. It was cold and dark. It was a perfect crime. I'll be rich. No one will know it was me. And then the house wasn't empty. The owner was home, and she was a little old lady. She's spoiling my perfect crime, and I'll probably go to jail now because she can recognize me. I've been seen. I've been found out. He was probably just a kid with poor impulse control, and he beats her to death to save himself from the consequences of his actions. So distraught over what he had done, he broke all the mirrors in the home. He couldn't bear to see himself. He tried to destroy every reflective surface because he couldn't look himself in the eye. This is what Everett says. So I thought about what he might have been thinking, and I remembered seeing that bat and saying I would beat him to death if he was there. I'm an adult, I'm a Christian, and I would deliberately kill him if he was here. And I thought, who has the darker heart? Whose heart was darker? Ev believes in that moment that his heart was darker than the guy with the impulse control problems, who was so distraught by his actions that he couldn't even look in a mirror, that he couldn't see any reflection of his face. He felt like his heart was darker than a young man with poor impulse control, who was scared and afraid and lashed out to try and prevent himself from going to jail, and ended up doing something much worse in the heat of the moment. If God can forgive me for the darkness in my heart, who am I to withhold forgiveness from this young man? So I was able to make the decision to forgive him and feel some amount of emotional relief, release, and peace. Ev told himself a better story, and he found a way to empathize with the young man, which Megan Stibbridge will talk more about next week. Ev was humble and aware enough to recognize that his own brokenness and his own darkness of heart. And he made a decision to forgive, even though the full emotional forgiveness was a much longer process. It began then. Now you might think, he's the forgiveness guy. He's an expert here. He's supposed to be good at this. He wrote a book. I'm just me. But Everett Worthington is just a man like many others who gets angry and gets hurt. He ruminates on pain. He tells himself negative stories. In fact, he says that the professor in college gave him a B in a class, and it took him 10 years to forgive him. Anybody like that? No? Forgiveness does not come easily to any of us. We live in a hurting world, and we are hurting people. Hurting is natural. Forgiveness is supernatural. God gave Eve a grace, a gift, a miraculous ability to forgive one of the most terrible events in his life that could happen to anyone. God gave Eve a grace, and he can give it to you. But even if it isn't quick or miraculously immediate, persevere in practicing forgiveness and let the Spirit transform you into a forgiving person as you work to forgive the small instances, that professor who gave you that B that one time, or worse, when you practice on the small things, it will make it easier to forgive the greater ones, not just decisionally, but emotionally as well. And we're in this together. The next few weeks, we're going to dive deep together as a community. And God is with you. So lean into the family of God. Be inspired by Jesus' words on the cross. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. He's telling a better story, right? And let the Spirit transform you into a forgiver. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we love you, and we are not good at this. We're not good at seeing things from other people's perspectives. We're not good at giving others the benefit of the doubt. We're self-interested creatures who need to learn how to love and need to learn how to forgive. And we thank you that you took the move towards us, that you loved first, that you forgave first, and we desperately need that, Lord. So we ask for your help. Spirit, be with us. Empower us. Help us to resist the descent and instead reach for forgiveness that you say is possible. Thank you, Jesus, that you have forgiven us over and over again. Thank you that we are not the worst thing that we've ever done. Help us not to make others that either. We love you, Jesus. It's in your holy name I pray. Amen. We're going to do a short personal reflection, right, Peyton? Yeah. But just a moment to pause and consider, what am I going to do in response to this? Do I want to grab one of those workbooks to work through? You can just download it later if you don't want anyone to see. But the reality is, we're all not good at this. We don't have to pretend that we have this figured out. But we're going to listen to a short song. There'll be a chance for you to respond. The QR code for the response card will be up there. You can say, hey, I'd like a physical copy, and we'll work on binding them this week. You can say, I'm going to start doing these things. I'm going to repeat this verse. I'm going to start looking at things objectively. I'm going to try and recall in a way others would agree with. And of course, it's a way to share prayer requests with our community. Our staff meets every week and prays for the prayer requests that people submit. We have a group in Church Center where all those prayer requests are shared as well, so our greater community can pray. Certainly, if you want to keep it anonymous or just a staff, you're able to do that. Not anonymous, just a staff. But we'll just pause and reflect for a moment, fill out the card, share a prayer request, and make a decision.
Blessed when I was cornered by doubt and quiet. When everything was too loud, you took my hand and you led me out. I can see the dust is settled now. This is where the war ends. This is where the war ends. This is where the war ends. Leaving it in your hands, life.
Okay, it's corporate reflection time. And that really just means spiritual practice activity. So here's what we're going to do. There's going to be 4 steps, and we're going to start together. So first, if you haven't thought of a hurt you struggle to forgive yet, now's the time. So we'll give you 2 minutes to think of something that you struggle to forgive. And then we're going to do a practice where we're going to imagine holding that in our hands together and releasing it. And then we'll give you a chance to write the story of the hurt in an objective way, to recall it differently. The whole idea is help me remember redemptively. Help me to remember in a way that moves me towards forgiveness instead of calcifies my bitterness. And we'll give you some time to write, try and recount something in a way that maybe a third party would agree is factually accurate, not with our internal biases that we like to tell the story, but just what the hurt was and what happened. And we'll end the time praying the Lord's Prayer together. So, first, recall a hurt you struggle to forgive. And if you need something to write with, there's actually paper and pens up here. If you want to grab one of the workbooks, this is one of the activities in there too. And I think a lot of them are only printed on one side, so you can use the other side. If you got your journal, you're set, right? Write on your phone if you need to. So first, recall a hurt you struggle to forgive. Pick a hurt that you do not feel like you can forgive right now. Imagine yourself back when you were hurt. You can probably remember the pain. Things might have happened since that day. Some things might have made the hurt worse. Maybe the person did not apologize or does not admit to hurting you. Maybe the person has hurt you again since. We're just going to take 2 minutes of reflection. Recall a hurt that you struggle to forgive.
All right. Thanks for participating in that. There's blood.